Well, welcome everyone to our panel on tools for awareness and conversations about religious freedom. Um, some students are handing out our 3 pieces of literature that we'll be focusing on today, but I'll just introduce myself and our speakers. First, I am Amy Andrus, an Associate Director at the International Center for Law and Religion Studies. And I will share abbreviated bios for our panelists here and invite you to read more about their many accomplishments on our online bio sheet. Doug McAllister, here in the middle, is retired from the Office of General Counsel of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints after having served as area legal counsel for the Brazil, Philippines, and Asia North areas. He currently serves as a member of the Executive Committee of the Geneva Office for Human Rights Education and is a senior fellow with the International Center for Law and Religion Studies. In another life, Doug held various positions in private law and business in Washington, D.C., New York, and Arizona. Brett Scharffs here on the end was introduced this morning, but I'll reintroduce him for those who may not have been there, is the Rex E. Lee Chair and Professor of Law and Director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies at BYU Law School. Brett has authored more than 100 articles and book chapters, made more than 300 scholarly presentations in 30 countries, and I think that's a very low ball figure. And in any given month is carrying out law and religion trainings and conferences around the world. Brett's latest achievement puts him in a category with one of the world's most famous actors. So Humphrey Bogart's heart was broken in Casablanca, and Brett Scharff's arm was broken in Casablanca. He recently came home from Morocco with an unwanted souvenir, but we're really grateful that he was well enough to be with us today. Gary Doxey, to my immediate left, your right, is an associate director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies, where he serves as regional advisor for Latin America. He is also a faculty member in BYU's history department, and Gary's career has been a tale of two halves, kind of divided between academia and public service. He was chief of staff and general counsel to Utah Governors Leavitt and Walker, and served as associate general counsel to the Utah legislature. So that's our panel, and I'll just start by saying those of us attending this annual review are usually among the choir. We're among the converted to the principle of religious freedom. We generally understand its importance. But we may want to become more knowledgeable, or we may want to develop greater confidence and fluency in engaging in discussions about religious freedom, or advocating for it in our spheres of influence, or helping find solutions when right claims seem to be in conflict. We thought it would be helpful to focus our panel discussion today on tools and resources available on our center's website that may be useful in developing your awareness, understanding, and knowledge relative to religious freedom and its relationship to other rights. Each of our panelists will discuss a specific tool found on our website, and then we'll open up some time for Q&A at the end. So what you see on the screen right here is the landing page for the International Center for Law and Religion Studies website. It's at ICLRS.org. And just a general overview of the website. It includes information about our mission, some of our more recent events or upcoming events. For instance, our law and religion, our annual International Law and Religion Symposium. There's information here about the upcoming one in October. Information about our blog, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. There's an archive of our annual reports. Information about those individuals who support our work, including our International Advisory Council members and our students who we rely on so heavily to carry off events such as this one. And then our publications as well. But at the very top of our website, and if you're looking at this on a phone, and I'd encourage you to do that later, but if you're looking at it on a phone, you would see some white bars in the upper right-hand corner of your phone if you go to our website, and these tabs are under those bars. We'll talk largely about the resources tab here at the top. I'm going to pull that down. You'll see a drop-down menu, And it may be a little bit hard to read. It's kind of small, but hopefully you can read that. The first two tabs are undergoing some construction. We're currently working on updating many of those links and resources there, but those top two tabs are for those individuals who are experts in law and religion and want to stay up to date, or who want to increase their expertise in law and religion, particularly on an international scale. For instance, under this research databases tab, I'll take us to the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, their website. It links to that. And that particular website, which is part of the State Department, has a web page where they list all of the provisions in international and regional instruments, such as the Universal Declaration on Human Rights or the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, all those that relate to freedom of religion or belief. These are international standards that countries are held to. In addition, this website includes an annual report that the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom puts out every year, as well as a list of countries of particular concern who are engaged in egregious violations of freedom of religion or belief, the right to freedom of religion or belief, and a special watch list of countries who may not be quite as egregious in their violations, but still should be monitored. So that's just one of the many resources under those first two tabs under resources on our website. We're going to focus on these last three tabs in the drop-down menu particularly. And I'll click on Religious Freedom Brochures. You'll note here that there's a landing page with a link to African Perspectives on Human Dignity brochure, one link for religious freedom brochures internationally. So if I click on that, you'll see that, for example, there's a brochure that is focused on American Samoa and religious freedom issues there and their laws that are in place there. And this particular version is in English, but there's also a Samoan version. And so most of these are targeted to specific countries and then are translated into the official languages of those countries. But I'll go back to that landing page and you'll see that there's a religious freedom brochure for the United States. I'll take you there. And there are currently two main brochures on this page. One deals with fairness for all, reconciling religious freedom and LGBT rights. It focuses on that topic. The other brochure is an updated version and a compilation of what was several brochures in the past. This has just recently been put out and was just put up on our website in the last 24 hours. Doug McAllister was key in getting this brochure compiled and updated. And so we'll have Doug talk a little bit about the brochure, about its content, its purposes, and its potential uses. And Doug, we're going to play musical chord here.
Just hold on to that because
Okay.
I think I'll save my slides for the end.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Gary and Brett are in between. But thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So can you hear me okay? I want to give recognition to Brent Belknap. He's in the back, who really was the guiding force in developing this brochure. I focus more on the international brochures that are available on the website. I need to be closer. But I want to, so all of you should have one. If you don't have one, there's some available in the back. But would you just pull this brochure out and let's spend just a couple of minutes looking at it. Let me say at the beginning that the concept behind these brochures is to create a simple tool, non-legalistic. It's not a brochure from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In fact, if you notice on the back page, you can see sponsoring organizations. BYU is prominent, and there's others there. But the idea is that these brochures would be used by everyone everywhere to talk about religious freedom. And it's, so just open the cover and you'll see the very first page focuses on the First Amendment, which is the most important part of the Constitution that provides religious freedom for us in the United States. Then turn to page 3 and you can see So this brochure and the other brochures, the international brochures, are set up in a question and answer format. This particular brochure has, is it 46 questions? And this is really nice because if you're looking for a particular question, you can find the question and there's a yes or no answer and then an explanation in almost every case. So then page 4 talks about what religious freedom is. It's nice when we use this brochure to discuss because there's confusion in the world about what religious freedom is, and there's controversy about it. In fact, this was even discussed at the previous session in here. Some people think if you're discussing religious freedom, you're talking about protecting religions, or you're talking about preferring religions, and that's not the case. So right at the very beginning, question 1, what is religious freedom? And there's a simple answer to it. Question 2, what laws protect religious freedom? And then question 3 is interesting on page 5. What is separation of church and state? I can tell you from my perspective, having worked on the international brochures, this question isn't in there. The concept of separation of church and state is something that's unique to the United States, and it's confused a lot of people, thinking that there should be a clear separation between the government and religion. And you'll notice in the answer, there's a beautiful answer to that, that's just an erroneous concept. So let me just test you here for a minute. If any of you have children in the public school, can they pray in school? I want you to look in the brochure and tell me the answer. It's a little test. And when someone finds the answer, raise your hand and, okay, and tell us what page it's on.
Page 8, number 10.
Okay, page 8, number 10. And what's the answer?
Yes, so long as prayers are not used to proselytize or advance any particular faith or belief. Good practice is to invite chaplains or representatives of various faiths, including non-Christian denominations, to take turns offering the prayers and to make the prayers generic in content.
Okay. Brent?
Page 20,
Page 20?
question number 40. And students pray at school.
Okay, good. Okay. Turn to page 20, question 40. Can students pray at school? And Brent, what's the answer?
The answer is yes.
Isn't it nice? There's yes and no answers. Okay, but
it says a school can't sponsor religious speech, even though students can pray voluntarily if it's student initiated and isn't disruptive. And then I love the example that's included here. For example, school-sponsored prayers or devotional scripture readings during the school day or at school events are impermissible, but school officials may lead a moment of silence. In other words, not a formal endorsement, but private practice of religion on school premises, public school premises, is permitted.
great. So you'll see this brochure was produced by professors at the center with the help of students, and it's all based in the Constitution, the rules of the cases of the Supreme Court, and other laws in the country. So good legal answers, but not legalistic. So it's very easy. So I'd like you just to turn to question 46 on page 22. We're going to focus just a minute or two on 46 and the last section, finding common ground. So the purpose of this session is entitled, How Can I Make a Difference? Tools for Awareness and Conversation. How can I make a difference? And the purpose of discussing this tool is for you to think about in your individual roles, in the spheres in which you live, with the contacts that you have, how can you use this tool? And I'll just tell you, I had an institute teacher, a friend of mine, who said, could you give a class in the institute on religious freedom? They adapted their curriculum, and I ended up teaching an hour-and-a-half class to institute students, passing out the brochure. This happened to be in Brazil, so it was the Brazilian version of this brochure. but it turned out to be very interesting. I'm the Elders Quorum president in my ward. The bishop gave us an assignment to teach the 5th Sunday lesson. The Relief Society president didn't want to do it. The bishopric didn't want to do it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take the opportunity and teach them about religious freedom. So in Provo, Utah, we had a 5th Sunday lesson on religious freedom, and I had available the Human Dignity brochure, the brochures on religious freedom that this brochure replaced. And you know what? It was like a mystery to many of the people there. They hadn't really heard about it. They didn't know that religious freedom was an issue in Provo, Utah. So what you can do as individuals is the answer to 46, and also finding common ground, which focuses on how we can make common cause and have civil conversations with people on this subject. So this is a very valuable tool, and I'm hoping that during this hour, you'll think about and you'll listen to promptings that you receive about how you can use this tool and the other tools that are being discussed in promoting religious freedom.
Thank you, Doug, for that comprehensive overview of what will be a really useful tool. Again, this is a compilation of what was several brochures, and it's so handy to just have it in a single brochure that we can refer to and easily share. We're going to move on to another resource. When it was the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was approaching, and our center began focusing as a result on the concept of human dignity as both the goal and the foundation of human rights. Human dignity is a concept that was articulated as such in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And since 2017-18, we've been engaged in a lot of work that focuses on human dignity. One particular project was the Punta del Este Declaration on Human Dignity for Everyone Everywhere. And if you go to the bottom of our website, there's a link to a brochure, which you also have in your hands. That link takes you to kind of a sub-website that we have, a Human Dignity for Everyone Everywhere website. And if you go up here to the top to Punta del Este Declaration, you can find copies of the brochure here under Human Dignity brochures in various languages. And Brett Scharffs will talk a little bit more about the Punta del Este Declaration and the content of that and the brochure.
Thanks, Amy. So, just so you're aware, these are great resources if you're having any sort of community event or any type of opportunity to be having, as Doug said, a 5th Sunday lesson or anything like that. We want to make these available to you. So if for any reason you need a bunch, let us know, and we're happy to share them and make them available to you. We have hundreds of copies, and we love sending them out to you in batches. So, we're here to proselytize and to make these available to you. So just know that we're eager to share these resources with you. So, as Amy said, a few years ago, we were trying to figure out what we might do to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this is the foundational human rights instrument that emerged after World War II. And at this time, this was 2017, 2018, human rights were becoming very politicized. This was partly because they were being viewed by many in the world as a form of Western imperialism, a way of banging governments over the head for their shortcomings. And frankly, they are also being used as a tool of promoting progressive sexual politics, abortion rights, and gay rights. For example, the primary gay rights movement in the United States was the Human Rights Campaign. And the Human Rights Campaign was just one thing. It was gay rights. But it was cleverly marketed. And I have nothing but respect for the gay rights movement for capturing the label of human rights and using it for their own agenda. But this had a backlash in many parts of the world where in more conservative cultures, human rights came to be viewed as nothing but an agenda to push liberal sexual rights agendas. And so as people trying to promote religious freedom and trying to promote human rights, we were finding it increasingly controversial to do this. And so we were having a brainstorming session in our little office here at BYU, and Jan Fagel, who was the European Union Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion and Belief outside the EU, now that's a mouthful, was there brainstorming with us. And he told us a story. And he was on the phone with the government of Pakistan. And the conversation went something like this. Hello, Pakistan. This is Jan Fagel, the EU Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief for outside the EU. I'd like to come visit. And he said, can you imagine the response? And this is Cole Durham and me around the table with Jan, and we kind of looked at each other, and we said, yeah. And he said, well, first there was a long silence, and then there was the sucking of air. And then there was a very skeptical and pained, what do you want to talk about? And he said, well, we'd like to come talk about human dignity and how it's important for all people in all places. And he said there was a shorter silence, and then there was a different tone to the response. Ah, karama. This is an important concept in our holy book, the Quran. Human dignity is important to Muslims. Why don't you come and we can talk? And this became a door-opening concept and a bridge-building concept. And based upon this, he went to Pakistan once, and then again, and then again, in increasingly friendly and public settings, and eventually he was having real conversations with them about some of the challenges in Pakistan relating to religious freedom. And Jan, it turns out, was one of the key people who helped negotiate the release of Asia Bibi. She was the Christian woman who was sentenced to life in prison for blasphemy for drinking out of a jug of water that was shared with a Muslim woman. And she now lives in Canada. She's been released from prison, but it was based upon this trust that he had built. And I'm not saying everything is well with religious freedom in Pakistan today. It definitely is not. But what that anecdote did is it got us focusing on human dignity as a way of thinking about opening doors and building bridges for conversations about religious freedom. And so that year, in 2018, we held 3 major conferences focusing on human dignity. One in Budapest at Central European University, one at Oxford, and then our symposium here at BYU. And what we learned is that human dignity is a very dynamic concept, and we came to view it as sort of the Swiss Army knife of human rights concepts. And all of this culminated in a gathering at Punta del Este, Uruguay, where a group of about 40 scholars, human rights activists, religious leaders gathered and drafted what became the Punta del Este Declaration on Human Dignity for Everyone, Everywhere. And from that, we have developed about a 7 or 8 year project focusing on human dignity. We've done projects in Africa, including an African Declaration on Human Dignity for Everyone, Everywhere, followed by a book on African perspectives on human dignity. We're working on another book on Asian perspectives on human dignity, another book on Islamic perspectives on human dignity. We've done a book on judicial uses of human dignity that has been published. And just one other quick anecdote. Last year, the Vatican issued a new document on human dignity called Dignitatis Infinita. Now, during Vatican II, the Catholic Church issued Dignitatis Humanae, which distinctly links human dignity to religious freedom. And it's the doctrine of religious freedom for the Catholic Church. Well, this new document on human dignity, one of our key partners on all of our human dignity projects has been a law professor in Italy named Andrea Pin. And the Vatican contacted him and said, we'd like to organize a conference on this new document, Dignitatis Infinita. Will you help us? And he said, yes, but if you want to do this, we really need to partner with BYU and the International Center for Law and Religion Studies, because they're the people who've been working on human dignity. And so we have been invited to do this partnership. And eventually they said, well, if we're going to partner with BYU, we ought to invite someone from the church to do this. And so Elder Christofferson is going to be going to this, participating in this conference in September as one of the key speakers at this really important conference happening in Rome. And so the purpose of our including this is because human dignity is a really great way of starting conversations and building bridges in contexts where maybe religious freedom is a little too hard or a little bit challenging as the opening move. And so what we find is that human dignity is a really powerful concept that leads inexorably to religious freedom, but is sometimes a door opener or a bridge building mechanism that helps lead to religious freedom.
Thank you, Brett.
May I just make a quick comment?
Yes, please do, Doug.
So I just want to tell you a personal experience. In Mozambique, I had an opportunity to help present the African Perspectives brochure on human dignity to a group of government and religious leaders, and they ate it up. It was amazing. You could feel in the room their intense interest in the book. And I didn't know that Africa would have a different perspective on human dignity than maybe the U.S. would, but they do, based on their cultural experiences and their history. And it's a fantastic, so there's a separate one for Africa that's available on the website.
Mm-hmm. Human dignity really is kind of a MacGyver-like tool, and is useful in so many contexts and applicable across so many cultures, and that's what makes it so effective. I'm going to turn some time over to Gary Doxey now to talk about this second to last topic here in the drop-down menu, tips and resources for engaging in conversations about religious freedom. This is a two-part document. It's just a very concise and simple guide to talking about religious freedom.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I reiterate what all that has been said about human dignity and about these valuable brochures that we're happy to help provide, or they're online. They're terrific resources, really. And we're talking about another resource. You should have a handout. It's 10 and 7. They go together. One is 10 ways to protect religious freedom, and the other is 7 keys to successful conversations. Now, I'd like to talk about those. Rather than go through all 7 or all 10, I just want to, I want to capture something here. We've all had uncomfortable conversations with someone. We've all had experience making friends. And those two things are at the heart of what these 10 and 7 tips and resources are about. How to have a better conversations about religious freedom, how to make a difference. And I know we're so interested in making a difference. That's why we're here in this session, why we're here at this conference. I'm just going to see if I can get this up on the screen. Good. How can I make a difference? Tips and resources. Well, if we distill these principles and tips, one of the things that becomes really clear is that knowledge is power. When we know about religious freedom, that it's not just an abstract concept, when we know what it means, and in a fuller sense than sometimes we do, we're much better equipped both to not just understand it for our own purposes, but to be able to share it and to defend it and to explain it and to engage in conversations that are meaningful. So first, number 1 is become informed. Here's a quote from Elder Christofferson. We need lawyers and non-lawyers who care enough about religious freedom and are well enough informed that they can recognize both existing threats and those that are likely to materialize in the future. We need to inform ourselves, become educated. These brochures actually will help you to a great extent become informed. Becoming informed is the first step, and it's a universal step. Some of us may not have the opportunities to have daily conversations, but we certainly can become informed. We cherish what we know, and so learning about religious freedom, it will make it easier for us to cherish and to protect it. In fact, one of the real threats today is that as people lose interest, particularly in organized religion, they also lose whatever understanding they had about why religious freedom is important. Religious freedom is important to people who are religious believers. It seems less important to those who are less interested. And so this becoming informed, can't emphasize enough. Really important for us to become informed. A second, again, distillation of the 7 and the 10. We've got to join with others. We've got to make friends. We don't necessarily want to do this in isolation. You know, in religious groups generally, we're quite insular. We tend to be pretty insular. We're not, I guess in its worst manifestations, religion could be a little bit about an us and them, siege mentality. But in its best manifestation, isn't it about loving each other and welcoming each other? In Christian theology, and Latter-day Saint theology in particular, we very much believe we're all part of one family, brothers and sisters, and that you are as important as I am in God's sights, and that doesn't change, regardless of our belief differences or even our conduct differences. And so that's a key ingredient to being successful in talking about religious freedom. Join with others, make friends, be part of a chorus, not a soloist. Building trust takes interaction, true listening, and a genuine desire to understand. We need to focus on common ground. The brochure, the U.S. brochure that Doug introduced, has a big section on finding common ground. Keys to help you understand how to find common ground with others. Broaden the coalition. Don't just stick with your close friends and associates who already believe like you do. Religious groups are targeted from both the left and the right when there is some sort of a political agenda that somehow touches upon religion. But religious freedom is for all. So we should be ready to extend beyond our circles and try to become friends with and involve all. A third one, again, part of my distillation, engage in your profession and community. Build credibility and expertise in your chosen field so that they listen to you. network. If they know you and respect you, you will be more effective. How often have you found that? If you're ever talking about a hard subject, but you're friends with the person, you can have a pretty good conversation. You know, I have a neighbor, and we call him the neighborhood whisperer. There is not a person of any political stripe, and there's a lot of differences. There's some strong feelings. I live in rural Utah, and they're not all in lockstep. You know, there's political difference, religious differences, and it's interesting. This neighborhood whisperer friend of mine, everybody thinks he's their best friend. And I think he is. I think he is. He's genuine about it. But he can say anything. He can have hard conversations, and he listens to them. If they know you and respect you, you'll be more effective. Participate in government and legal institutions. Follow the Ammon principle of providing selfless service to others. You'll recall, those of you who are familiar with the Book of Mormon, the story of Ammon, who was of very high birth, but became a servant in order to serve others, and how much his service meant, and allowed the king to open his mind to listen to Ammon so that he could be taught the gospel. If we are serving and helping, it makes a difference. Be an example of what is highest and best in your belief. When people see your good works, something happens. Here's just a couple of scriptural quotes. Be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity. When we're good examples, we teach a better sermon than in any other way. Let your light so shine before men, the Savior said, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Example has power. Stand up with civility. Stand firmly on principle. Do not retreat. Do not be negligent. You know, a lot of times people generate really negative ideas about religious freedom because those who believe in religious freedom either don't know or don't speak up to help them or inform them better. Do not be negligent. Freedom has always required sacrifice. Effective advocacy, however, requires civility. They won't listen to you otherwise. Anger never persuades, said President Russell M. Nelson. Hostility builds no one. Contention never leads to solutions. I just thank you for your time and this distillation, and hope that you'll take this home and think about it and try to apply it by being a good friend and a good listener, and understanding these things better and speaking more intelligently about them. Thank you.
So this sheet again is available on the under the resources tab of our website. It is actually a distillation of some information that was found on the church's website. You'll note the source down there at the bottom of the sheet. It's adapted from the church's Religious Freedom Manual. So feel free to run these out, download them, run them off, and share them during your Fifth Sunday lessons or your church meetings related to religious freedom, particularly as Independence Day is around the corner. Gary, let me take the cord, and I just need it one more time before I pass it on to Doug. I'm just going to review a few final resources here on our website. We've got, let me exit out of this screen. The final resource under this drop-down menu is the Religious Freedom Library. So leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints a few years ago proposed the idea of creating a repository for general authority talks and BYU devotional talks and other talks at significant events on religious freedom, so that members of the church and others could access this repository and refer to it regularly. So we actually house that on our website here under the resources tab under religiousfreedomlibrary.org, and it is regularly updated. We're always welcome to suggestions too. If you have additional knowledge of additional talks that you feel should be included, we can certainly vet those and add them to the repository. Let me just show you a little bit of some features of this library. You can do a topic search here at the top. Featured documents are always here at the top, and those are relatively static. So Elder Oaks, President Oaks' talk, for example, at the University of Virginia is located here, as well as some from Elders Cook and Christofferson. And then down here, you'll see more recent documents. So the updated documents are down here. We've got one from Elder Corbett from January at a South Carolina Religious Freedom Conference, and from Sister President Johnson at a European Union event in Belgium in March of last year. Elder Nash has already given us the text of his talk that he delivered this morning, and we'll upload that within the next several days, and that should be available here in the repository. You can search by author. There are all authors, church leaders, invited speakers. For example, we've got a talk here from Senator Joseph Lieberman, who is certainly not a leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but has delivered some an important message at BYU Devotional or Forum about religious freedom. If you go under Documents, you can search by oldest and newest. For example, if you look at the oldest list first, you'll see that the first one available is from a 1978 BYU devotional by Elder Neil A. Maxwell. The more recent one, of course, is Elder Corbett's, and then the authors run anywhere from Elder Neil L. Anderson to Elder Lance B. Wickman. So you can search that way by author, by topic, by date, and also do keyword searches. If you go up here to topics, you can see a type of index. For example, let's say you want to look at religious freedom in relation to refugees and immigrants. Here, President Jeffrey R. Holland talked about the Mormon refugee experience at an event in the UK in 2016. So this is an incredible resource if you're looking for information, again, for church events or just to learn more about religious freedom as a principle, a religious principle. Going back to our website, let me show you just two final things. This Headlines tab here at the top, if you click on that, that will take you to our Law and Religion headlines. Our center actually gathers all of the law and religion news, well, not all, but most of the important law and religion news from sources from around the world and compiles it into a law and religion headlines list. And this is updated on a daily basis. It also covers law and religion related events and webinars. If you'd like to get more informed, you can certainly keep an eye out for events or webinars that would be educational. And then these law and religion headlines are compiled into a digest that you can subscribe to and have it delivered to your inbox, your email inbox 3 times a week. So I'm going to go here to the digest archive. If you look at the latest digest from June 12th, you can see international headlines, European headlines, US-related headlines. For example, the DOJ sues California Coffee House for discriminating against Jewish customers, or the Oklahoma City Thunder in a league of their own when it comes to pregame prayer. So all kinds of topics related to law and religion. You can search by year, month, or topic. So if you're looking for a particular country or a particular state issue, you can certainly do that, and you can subscribe here under this tab to have those law and religion headlines delivered in digest form to your inbox 3 times a week. The final tab I will show you is our blog. It's an academic blog on law and religion, a little bit niche, but still informative. For example, we recently ran in our blog a feature on Pope Francis and his legacy. It was authored by several religious leaders and Catholic scholars. We recently ran a series on how laws in certain countries can limit or expand the right to name your religious group in those countries. So the laws that affect the naming of religious organizations in countries. Fred Geddix, a retired BYU law professor, recently wrote a post on the Oklahoma charter school case, the Supreme Court case, where the Supreme Court narrowly affirmed the lower court's ruling in that case. So You may not agree with everything that's found on our blog, and that's not the point. It's not the point to be an echo chamber. It's to bring diverse viewpoints together on timely topics related to law and religion in the United States and internationally. We have a few minutes now for questions and answers. So we'll have the students in the back with the microphones, pass those around, and Brent, do you want to do our...
Just really quickly, just an endorsement, if I might, not a question, but I want to do a shout out to Tina Ramirez Lee, who's here. Her organization is a sponsor of this brochure that's been handed out. Doug McAllister prepared a brochure for Brazil that got over 50 sponsors for the Brazil version. I worked on the Nigeria version, got over 25 sponsors. This US brochure should have many, many more sponsors. If there is anyone here who works with an organization that has some sort of national repute, reputation, influence, gravitas, that should be considered as a sponsor on the back of this brochure, please know that the cost of sponsoring the brochure is nothing to the sponsoring organization. It's to pull like-minded organizations together to show that they also endorse this summary, which is written from a very politically neutral standpoint. It's not advocating one far side or the other with respect to religious freedom issues in the United States. It's written dispassionately, objectively, factually, and it is current and timely. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Yes.
I've noticed over the last roughly 2 years that Governor Cox has promoted his Disagree Better program, and that a lot of the points that he makes about listening to someone who disagrees with you are very similar to the material that you have here in the 7 points. Is this an example of two independent minds coming to the same conclusion, or was he involved in any of this at some point?
The putting together of this material actually predates his office holding. But I think it's an example that the great ideas that he was promoting resonate more universally. And I think we're all in favor, all of us in this room, of having better conversations and better, more ability to disagree better.
Might be interesting to note that Governor Cox publishes a resolution every January for January 15th, Religious Freedom Day for the state. And this year it was requested that he send copies of that, which isn't done automatically, to all of the state legislators. Just an added Governor Cox thought.
I was just curious as to how well this document has been received by governments around the world, and how they've implemented it, if they have, in educating their citizens.
So, at the risk of being a little self-promotional, we think that the focus on human dignity has had a pretty significant effect on the global dialogue surrounding human rights in general. It's hard to claim causal connections, yeah, but our sense is that there's been a real sea change in human rights discourse towards a focus on human dignity. And we think that the center and our focus on this has had a pretty significant impact globally. We've been focused for about 7 years now in a pretty significant, sustained way on human dignity. And we've seen in just the number of books and articles and references to human dignity globally, a pretty significant uptick in discussions about human dignity. One of the things that's really interesting about human dignity is almost everyone has something interesting to say about human dignity if you'll stop and listen. And so one of the things we've been doing is trying to expand the range of voices that we listen to. And so, for example, last year, our conference at BYU Hawaii, we partnered with the Religious Freedom and Human Dignity Initiative there. We focused on Oceania and Oceanian perspectives on human dignity. And I mean, the participants in that conference were just so grateful that anyone wanted to listen to them, because they're just not used to being listened to. And the entire conference was devoted to listening to people from Vanuatu and Tahiti and Samoa and Tonga, and then sort of trying to amplify their voices. And it was really beautiful because what you got from those island cultures was perspectives on human dignity that were quite different than what you get from the Western philosophical tradition. I mean, the Western European tradition of human dignity is dominated by Immanuel Kant. And the vision of human dignity there is beautiful and inspiring, but it's very individualistic. I mean, if you know Immanuel Kant, you know that it's based upon autonomy and the autonomy of the human person. And dignity is a very individual concept. But when you get to the islands of the Pacific, dignity is a very communal concept. And they talk a lot about things like the dignity of the dead. I don't think Immanuel Kant ever thought for a minute about the dignity of the dead. And yet for the island cultures, the dignity of the dead is a very important part. And it's also true in African indigenous cultures. Thinking about the dignity of the dead is a really important part of human dignity. And so what we think is so moving about human dignity as a concept is not that we're looking for an imperial definition of human dignity. What we think human dignity does is it creates an opportunity for us to learn from each other and to deepen and broaden our shared humanity. Where if we'll really pause and listen and learn from each other, it's not that we're going to get a better legal definition or even better laws, but what we're going to get is a deeper shared appreciation of our depths and breadth of human connection and understanding of our shared humanity. And that resonates. I mean, just last week we had a conference in Kyoto on what we're calling dialogic human dignity. And what we're doing there is we're trying to bring in to conversation historical conceptions of human dignity from great figures or traditions with contemporary human rights conceptions of human dignity. And this opens a whole new avenue of inquiry, this idea of dialogue between different historical and not just historical figures, but historical traditions and contemporary understandings. And so we think that this idea, this deep concept of human dignity is actually really important and is for Christians and for people of the book, for Jews, Muslims, and Christians. It's deeply tied to the idea of being created in the image of God. And so for religious people, especially for Christians, human dignity is deeply tied to this idea of Imago Dei. And for Latter-day Saints, I think the idea of Imago Dei is actually different than it is for a lot of other Christians, because we have such an embodied understanding of God the Father. And so for us as Latter-day Saints, for those who are Latter-day Saints, the idea of what it means to be created in the image of God has a embodiment that gives Latter-day Saints a sense of what human dignity means, where we actually have something to contribute to the understanding of human dignity that is a perspective which is beautiful, even for those who don't share our conception of God. It is actually a really beautiful contribution to the understanding of Imago Dei.
Thank you, Brett, for that eloquent, beautiful answer. We often feature aspects of, or certain perspectives from these conferences on our center's blog. So, for example, there were several presentations that were offered at the Oceanian Perspectives on Human Dignity conference that are highlighted on the blog with links to those messages. So feel free again to browse our website and our blog to learn more about these principles. We're going to turn the time over to Doug to conclude.
That's not showing.
I have one. May I ask one question, or should I wait until the end?
We're just about out of time, and we wanted to give Doug a few moments to offer some concluding remarks. So we're happy to stay afterward and answer any questions or talk over lunch as well. And I think someone went to go find Jackson to help.
No, we've got it.
Oh, we've got it? Okay, great. Perfect.
After Brett gave that eloquent statement of human dignity, I almost wanted just to end the meeting at that point. But the last slide, I'm going to show quick slides here. The last one is the prophet. So we'll let the prophet have the final say. So here's, again, a reminder of the purpose of this section. And I wish that I could ask you, what promptings have you had during this session of how you can use these tools and resources to promote religious freedom and the concept of human dignity. But I want to tell you about a man in Brazil named Odacir Prigol, who was a very staunch Catholic. And he's been a leader in the J. Reuben Clark Law Society in Brazil. And on his own initiative, using the Brazilian brochure, he went to a coffee of evangelical pastors, more than 300 leaders of diverse evangelical churches, and taught them the brochure, handed copies out, and had a session just like this, where they had questions and answers and comments, and talked about how they could use the brochure in their congregations. Here's another example. Again, acting on his own. He went to a synagogue and did the same thing. He's better than our missionaries, right? And here's the third example. The Foursquare Gospel Pentecostal Church in Curitiba. There he is again, holding up the brochure on his own initiative. He went to teach them the principles there and talk about how they could use this tool in their congregation. And I'll just end with this last slide. This is from President Nelson's talk, Peacemakers Needed. Brothers and sisters, we can literally change the world, one person and one interaction at a time. How? By modeling how to manage honest differences of opinion with mutual respect and dignified dialogue. Amen.
Amen.